The Philadelphia 76ers once again find their name at the top of the list of trade rumors regarding a certain star. This time it's Zach LaVine that their name has been attached to. Expect this to be a theme over the next couple months as the trade deadline looms, as the Sixers' main outlook from the James Harden initial deal was essentially to kick the can down the line, stock the closet with assets, evaluate the Sixers team, and take a look at what that missing piece might be. In this video, I want to break down if Zach LaVine could be that guy and just gauge the level of seriousness the interest is from both sides. So let's get right into it and begin with things today. So I want to start with this report from Jake Fisher right here of Yahoo Sports, which says, quote, LaVine and his representation have hold several preferred landing spots, such as the Los Angeles Lakers, Miami Heat, and Philadelphia 76ers, league sources told Yahoo Sports, and each team has registered some level of interest in the Bulls guard. LaVine also has an eye on joining the San Antonio Spurs, sources said, in order to pair with rookie sensation Victor Wembanyama and reunite with head coach Greg Popovich, who oversaw the 2020 Team USA outfit that LaVine helped win gold in Tokyo. So you can see that the Sixers are mentioned within that top three teams there. Those are some pretty likely teams. I think the Lakers and Heat are both serious contenders to add Zach LaVine, but there's plenty of ties to the Sixers specifically. To start with, that Zach LaVine is a Drew Hanlon guy. We know that as the same trainer that Joel Embiid has. He's also a New Balance and Clutch Sports guy, which are both areas where Tyrese Maxey overlaps with him. There's a New Balance commercial airing all over TV with both LaVine and Maxey in it. I do know that they've hung out at events connected to both Clutch Sports and New Balance, so there is the connection there between everybody, which does make sense. Now, I want to begin by saying my biggest concern with LaVine is if he's willing to buy into what the Sixers are doing. That Joel Embiid is clearly the alpha of this team. Tyrese Maxey is that secondary star, and would take LaVine being content with being that third piece for this to work. And it is very clear that he's intending on being traded. Now, I'm going to begin. There's a couple things here. I'll start with this quote that normally Zach LaVine says he's frustrated Bulls aren't winning. Usually he responds to rumors by saying, quote, if it doesn't come out of my mouth, ... He didn't do that today. Said, quote, it's a business. Said Rich Paul and AK have a good relationship. That referring to the Bulls GM there. And a little bit later that we saw Zach LaVine posted up with Rich Paul at a college basketball game with the B Clutch hoodie on. That is the moment where it clicked on me. He said, oh yeah, this bridge is burnt. This guy isn't coming back. This man wants to be traded, because Rich Paul is very much a professional at maneuvering through these difficult situations, getting his players to their desired destination. The Sixers saw that front and center with the Ben Simmons situation, as Rich Paul was the guy pulling the strings for most of that operation, and also had Tyrese Maxey directly tied into things. So Rich Paul, one of the most powerful men in all of sports, and very clear that he's working in Zach LaVine's best interest here. Now, to bring up Maxey specifically, I did want to bring up this part. This is per Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. In his initial report, he said, quote, Chicago would obviously prefer to acquire someone like Maxey, but Philadelphia has no intentions of trading the rising star. That is the right outlook by Daryl Morey. That if you get a phone call that says, we're not trading Zach LaVine unless you give us Tyrese Maxey, you hang up that phone. That there is no chance that that is worth it for the Sixers in both the short and long term. For starters, Zach LaVine is on a $40 million contract and has several years left. That this is a long-term commitment to this guy, and Daryl Morey has preached and preached again about his desire to keep flexibility, to keep cap space, and allow them to maximize themselves down the line. You would have to be all in on Zach LaVine being the missing piece for them to sacrifice this. And to look at specifically what LaVine brings to the table, let's take a look at his stats here. So in his career, and averaging 20.6 points per game, 4.0 rebounds, 3.9 assists, a career 38.2% three-point shooter on 5.8 attempts per game. And to look at this year specifically on the year, 22.6 points per game, 5.0 rebounds, 3.0 assists, shooting 33.3% on threes, but 7.6 attempts per game. I do like the volume there. What I'll say about Zach LaVine is I think both sides of the Zach LaVine things push it a little too far, that the people that are anti-Zach LaVine throw a lot of things that stick to him that I don't think necessarily would in a different system, that he has his downsides as a player. He's not a good defender. That's probably the number one that jumps on, and particularly off ball. He gets very lost. But the thing that I push back on that is he is a better defender than James Harden. I'll give you that right now. And the Sixers were a passable defense with Harden last year. What I really like about LaVine and where I do see the fit is, number one, the Sixers are starved of secondary ball handling. That you can see the night and day difference in this team when Tyrese Maxey's on the floor and when he's off it. And even with guys like DeAnthony Melton and Patrick Beverley having their attempts to run the offense and create some sort of fluidity, there's just not that secondary score that can create for both themselves and the team as a whole. Adding LaVine to that, he would be that guy. And my appeal even greater than that to me is the way that LaVine can operate off ball. He's a really efficient catch and shooter. He's a guy that has spectacular off ball movement when he is committed. If that's the type of role that he imagined and would be committed to on the Sixers team, I do think it makes sense. But I don't know if he's that missing piece specifically, if he's the one thing. And I do think Daryl Morey is zeroed in on that. As of now, we are 12 games into this NFL or NBA season from the Sixers' perspective, that things are going well. You have to be sure that this would be the right move to make it. And I just think teams like the Lakers and Heat are going to move more rapidly to make sure that's the case. The Sixers are in a difficult spot based on the fact that they have all this unknown ahead of them. Of its what players are truly available, what trades would we be passing up on in the future by doing this deal right now. And you can debate the logic of both sides of whether you'd rather get something done for the sure thing that's available, but what if the missing player, maybe an OG Anunoby type, who's a guy that I've been very excited about and would love to see in a Sixers uniform. It would be very frustrating if the Sixers trade for Zach LaVine right now and then OG Anunoby comes available in the future and then the assets that it would take to get him are no longer available to use. So there's a lot of balancing that has to be done here. And to speak specifically more on the Sixers outlook, which was written later in the Jake Fisher article, I do think this is very important here. That Fisher writes, quote, "The Sixers now sit in prime position to pursue an all-star talent like LaVine with 3 additional first-round trade assets to play with, 2 future picks along with an unprotected swap thanks to this month's James Harden trade with the Clippers. Philadelphia also holds a collection of mid-sized salaries to aggregate for a maximum contract player such as LaVine. But Sixers officials have surely been encouraged by the team's hot start behind Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, while valuing the newfound depth as part of their Harden haul, most notably Robert Covington and Nicholas Batum. It has always seemed more likely the Sixers continue to evaluate this roster in the context of Maxey's rise into all-star form and perhaps all-NBA consideration before acting too swiftly to acquire a player and eliminate the previous cap space Philadelphia values ahead of next summer, which no other contender, in the Sixers' view, should be able to match. Front office personnel who've overlapped with Philadelphia president Daryl Morey believe there are several players, likely a list of players, the Sixers would strongly consider moving on now if they were to become available at this juncture of the young season. LaVine does not appear to fit that billing, even if he could be had closer to that February trade deadline. So I do think that there's a ton to read into that and a ton of important notes to take away from that statement. Fisher very much clearly reinforcing this patient mindset of the Sixers as well as this cap flexibility that the Sixers do put themselves in a very unique position that as of now is Joel Embiid and Paul Reed set to be under contract. And Paul Reed, by the way, it comes with a little, depending on how their playoffs wrap up, that the Utah Jazz, when they signed him to that offer sheet, put a little clause in there about getting past the second round of the playoffs or getting to the second round of the playoffs for his contract to become fully guaranteed for next year. So there's a chance Paul Reed enters free agency again once again this year if things do not go well for the Sixers. But my point being in this that they have all this empty money and all this flexibility in the future. And Daryl Morey has a true chance to put his fingerprints on the Sixers team. That Joel Embiid is still clearly the centerpiece. They have this rising star in Tyrese Maxey who will have a blank check attached to his name. And I do want to make it clear that him not being under contract has zero to do with the lack of faith in him. And it's more than maneuvering around the cap space a little bit. That teams can spend more to re-sign their players than it is to sign others. So Daryl Morey made the wise approach to say, we're going to keep this max slot open and then give you as much money you want at the end. That's a better way. They can get more bang for their buck from the salary cap perspective by doing it this way. It is a little bit of a risk if Maxey all of a sudden becomes, not happy with the situation or things as a whole, but he does seem like a long-term piece. Like he loves it here. Everyone very clearly loves him and he is the future of this franchise. So there should be a blank check attached to his name. And I pray that that comes to fruition. But the bottom line being that Daryl Morey thinks the Sixers can be in a unique position where they have an MVP caliber player in Joel Embiid. They have a rising star in Tyrese Maxey. They have an open max slot for whoever wants it, and they have the second most cap space across the entire NBA, trailing only the Orlando Magic, and it's tough to argue that these Sixers aren't a more desirable location than the Orlando Magic, although they're building up a pretty talented young roster right there, so they are moving in the right direction. But this is what the Sixers' outlook is. This is why it's so important to maintain this flexibility. Is Zach LaVine the guy that you want to marry yourself to and commit to, and especially in this short term of an opportunity? That you can play both sides to say it makes more sense to get a deal done now so these players can learn how to build off each other, build chemistry, learn how to play together. But there's also, once again, the standpoint of you're selling yourself short by not seeing what the full available options are. And if a player better than LaVine in the future comes, then you're kind of out of luck. So the Sixers have to be careful. while they are in the best position they've been in several years when it comes to assets and ability to trade for players, they can't use them up too quickly. That we've seen the cabinet get emptied very rapidly when there was this star hunting phase that occurred back in the Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris era, even when there was rumors of guys like Kawhi and LeBron James that the Sixers were trying to attack. They have to make sure they get this right. That by all likelihood, this is the last chance to build a championship core around Joel Embiid. We've tried it under plenty of names now. We've been through the Jimmy Butlers, the Tobias Harris, all these guys that have come and gone, and that this is the core, that they have to make sure they get this one right. This is the championship core. So for now, the Sixers are going to sit back, keep trying to win games, and evaluate what this team is missing. How good can Tyrese Maxey truly be? What is the type of player that would complement him as a whole? And what is the missing link to tie between him and Joel Embiid to elevate them to the top? Are they satisfied with their wing depth? Are they comfortable with Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, Tobias Harris, these being the rotation of guys? Those are all questions that still need to be answered. For now, I think the proper move for these Sixers and the likely move for these Sixers is to sit back, wait, let the Lakers and Heat get into a bidding war over Zach LaVine, and not sacrifice your future. For now, we will see what happens. But who knows? We could be wrong if Daryl Morey gets an itch and does believe LaVine's the guy. But I don't see things trending in that direction. So I expect them to maintain and stay in the rumors. But I don't think the Sixers will be a guy ending Zach LaVine. But I do want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment. Let me know what you think. If Zach LaVine would be the guy that you strike for, it's clear that he is at least interested in coming to Philadelphia. I'm not entirely closed-minded on it, but I think I would just like to see this process out a little more. Ultimately, we will see. Thank you guys again, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well. I'll talk to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.